The Awoken of the Reef, Destiny 2, Forsaken. Card 1, Revenge 2. Mara calls a caucus of elected representatives in the Sacred Fire, one of the largest hulks in the Reef of derelicts. The fire was built to support habitat construction on 4 Vesta, where Mara hopes one day to anchor the entire flotilla and set down roots, but the hopeful, fearful faces before her make Mara afraid it'll never happen. What if everyone runs off at the first hint of home? Having come so far across worlds and eons to see Earth again, how can she ask them to hold back now? We found humanity, she tells them. We found our ancestors. The cheer, triumph, and wonder fills her to the marrow. Most of these Awoken are distributary born, raised on myths of humanity and the traveler. She has just opened the pages of their storybooks and conjured them to life. What remains of the human species lives in a single settlement. She nods to Aldrin, who snaps his fingers for footage. His ship's holographic perspective plunges through fluffy strata of clouds and mist out into clean air. A lucid vista, a perfect instant, the white mountains, the city, and the enormous shattered sphere that hangs above it. Freeze, Aldrin commands. That is the traveler. As the crowd murmurs and thrills, Mara feels herself brittle. She doesn't like that threat of reverence. She doesn't like the traveler looming there, almost but not quite completely dormant, like a dying heart ripped from its body and thrown into warm water. It ebbs and flutters if you look at it with the right sensors. If the traveler had the power to protect anyone, wouldn't it protect more than one huddled settlement? Asila, daughter of Sela, leaps up from the crowd, too small to make it on her own, but buoyed up by enthusiastic neighbors. What are we waiting for, she calls. That's everything we came to find. They need us, and that's where we belong. Aldrin and Mara trade glances. Aldrin snaps his fingers and the recording resumes. Something moves in the treetops. The canopy roils and parts. A red-brown aircraft shaped like a fat, wingless, furiously angry dragonfly bursts from cover and climbs to intercept. Aldrin's head-cued camera tracks the target, and Mara imagines his narrow grin as she waits for the other guy to make a move. The dragonfly's ship drops a brace of little needles, and they erupt into dirty orange flame and come arrowing after Aldrin. Everyone in the caucus gets an earful of his grunts as he whisks through a high-G turn and climbs away. Those are fallen, Aldrin says. They're a species of interstellar scavengers and subsistence pirates. They've been here for a long time, and they've sacked most of the large settlements that survived the original fall of humanity. There may be more fallen than there are humans left on Earth. He lifts his chin to bare the pale scar across his throat. I landed and went looking for prisoners. I was ready when he pulled 2 knives on me, but it turned out he had an extra set of arms. Nervous laughter. Worse, Mara adds, beckoning for the pains of deep space passive sensor data. They're all over the solar system. We've detected flotillas of their interstellar ships around Jupiter and Venus. They don't go near Mars, but only because it's under occupation by another alien species. Mercury is, well, you can see for yourself. Gasps of horror at the clockwork cylinder, all that remains of the legendary garden world. We believe this may be the work of the Vex, a machine species listed in the ship spire's threat index. Asila famed his story and puts voice to the plea in the crowd. So they need our help, don't they? We have to go to them. Our ships, our technology, we can make all the difference. No, Mara collapses the projected images between her hands. She stayed up late wrestling with this dilemma, which kept her from wrestling with Zur. It was a choice she had to make alone. We can't reveal our existence, lest the Fallen track us down. We need more information. Our focus must remain on securing this derelict reef, bootstrapping industry and population, and scouting out the solar system. Mara, with all my respect, all my genuine gratitude for bringing us here, Asila sighs. Who died and made you queen? Mara says nothing, but she thinks. Everyone, Asila. All of us died and made me queen. Card 2, Revenge 3. It's bad, Tsuraido says, confirming what Mara already knows, but nonetheless performing the valuable service of mopping away all the blood and tears and allowing Mara to glimpse the actual shape and wound that divides her people. Not a literal wound, though she is right now tending to Aldrin's scars, tweezing tiny fragments of fallen metal out for analysis, but the rift in her reef, the schism now re-schematic, as if the quakes that split the distributary Awoken from Mara's people is now firing off aftershocks. She should have known this would happen. She shouldn't have told them so much about Earth. How bad? Sewer pokes Aldrin hard in the gut, where a passing line of molten metal left a red burn. He's under anesthesia, but he snarls at her anyway. As of the last caucus, I'd say 30% of the expedition wants to head for Earth. If you ask the 891, though there aren't 891 of them anymore, it's more likely 80%. Mara swears and pulls a bloody line of solidified slag from her brother. Unacceptable. We can't lose their skills, or their genes. The Awoken have yet to adapt to the attrition of this harsh spaceborne world, and tentative mothers are still in the early stages of designing their babies. It's vital to maintain a diverse gene pool, and the Fallen will vector them back to us. I know, Sewer says heavily. That's when I'm going to die. The most horrible thing about the words is that they slap down on Mara's consciousness like face-up cards, like truth revealed. Unacceptable, she barks, and then both she and Sewer begin laughing, and then, at last, Mara shakes her head and growls. You can't know that, Sewer. No one can know that. I do. I don't know how, but I do. I know it's going to be something I choose to do, and it's going to be incontrovertibly heroic, which is enough for me. But if that's true, Mara proposes, flinching away from the personal conversation they really ought to have and all its attendant rawness. If you die when the Fallen attack us, it means I won't stop these people from fleeing to Earth, and the Fallen are going to find us, and we're doomed. She is already building the intricate models of how the universe might accommodate fate or doom, or how she might go about destroying those things. Could be, I suppose. Sewer pulls a parchment-thin rag of dead flesh off Aldrin's wound. Look, I'm the Queen's bodyguard. I always expected I'd die violently. I'm not the Queen. Maybe that's your problem. She flicks Aldrin in the chest, leaving a purple bruise, fading. What is with you two anyway? You never talk about him, you never seem to think about him at all, but he's dashing himself to pieces for you. How do you live as his favorite and only sister for so many centuries and hardly even smile at him? Secrets, Mara thinks. You've got to have secrets from each other so there's room for him to fill the gaps with his own happy illusions. Two ships joined together rigidly will tear each other apart if they try to move, but a loose tether leaves room to maneuver and can be more quickly disengaged if necessary. That makes her think of Sewer's prophecy again. She sets the shrapnel down in the dissection disc very gently. You won't die. I won't allow it. Card 3, Revenge 4. Of all the disasters that might happen in space, riot is the worst. Breaches can be contained, fires can be starved, plague can be quarantined, radiation shielded, heat vented. But a riot has a will of its own, a chaotic ingenuity that corrodes any countermeasure. Mara crawls through compartments choked with vaporized coolant. She keeps low and clutches the breather to her face. All she can think of is Keldawaj's last message and the data attached. Mara, the paracausal effects are the strongest around you. Whatever has happened to us, you are the locus. I cannot overstate how subtle and how important this discovery might be. Mara, when we use radioactive decay as a trigger for simulated bombs that could harm Awoken, the trigger atoms are 1,000-fold less likely to decay near you. People are literally safer when you are around. She has to get into the riot. She has to protect her people. A horrible groan vibrates through the habitat structure, and then, with an apocalyptic shudder, something tears off the reef. A ship. A ship is leaving. Mara has failed. Mara drops onto her belly and pants into the mask. Then, cringing in anticipation of migraine, she activates the augment, the jury-rigged machine her E-techs produced for exactly this purpose by extracting Mara's ruined distributary implants and reworking them. She's going to fire a command override to shut down the ship's systems. But then she realizes it's a salvaged human vessel, deaf to her commands. She gasps in frustration, sucking down cold bottled air. "Zur, I'm here," her radio whispers. "Pinned down in the dockmaster's office. I shot a few in the shoulders and they seem to have gotten the idea. Let them go. If one chip's away, there's no sense holding back the rest. Our position is compromised." Understood. Broadcast to everyone. I'm going to allow anyone who wants to leave the reef to go. This is their one and only chance. She rolls onto her back and stares up into these swirling vortices of coolant, seeing faces, futures, the lives she has just lost and the lives she might yet lose. She brought her people here to die in the sense that she brought them into mortality, but she never wanted it to happen quickly. "They know, Your Majesties," Zur says. "They already know." "What?" "You told us. We heard your voice." All like gratitude in Zuraido's voice. "Mara, I heard you. You spoke to me." Card 4, Revanche 5. Thus the Riven Awoken were riven again into Reefborn and Earthborn. Those who left went to scour the ruins of lost history and give some succor to their human cousins who still clung to a hostile world. The Awoken came onto these humans like Nephilim, armed with lost weapons, forgotten history, and medicine. They were like the omens of hope, for they were often taken to be starborn colonists returned to the hearth, which was not, after all, so far from truth. All who looked on them saw the night sky contained more than lurking doom. They bred true with each other and sometimes hybridized with humans, and in the course of centuries, many forgot the distributary and even the reef. However, there was always in their souls an itch, a vector pointing to a distant place in the asteroid belt where their queen still dwelt. "They've made a difference already," Zur told Mara not long after the first Awoken made planetfall on Earth. "They'll save so many lives just with the provision of medicine, pure water, and construction supplies that even if they all died by year's end, they would each yield 10 or 20 humans." "I know," Mara said with bitter pride. "Let the people remember them as saints and paladins, and tell no one how many more might have been saved if they've only kept the faith." For she knew the precious value of each Awoken life. She knew how many she would have to spend and mourned each soul wasted on a lesser purpose. On the day the Fallen struck, Mara was proclaimed queen. It happened swiftly, though after no little debate among the people, for everyone was afraid of a monarch who could speak to their thoughts. Yet they feared more to deny her power and sovereignty, for they had come between worlds in her name. To refuse her would be to refuse their choice. "Awoken," she told them. "For the first time in my life, I hesitated to reach for power, and now 1 in 3 of you are gone. I cannot deny what the cosmos has made of me any longer. I am your one and rightful queen." She knew she had been a fool to pretend to be peers to the others. What was true of her brother was true of all Awoken. They needed secrets to marvel at, secrets that rhymed with the deep enigma of their souls. They could not follow what they fully understood. There would be a formal coronation later in a place not yet built. Out of respect for that unhappened coronation, Mara did not at first wear a crown, and later she claimed as her diadem the ring of the event horizon that surrounds the observable universe. "My Techians," she said, gathering Keldawaj and the other Uteks that remained, "you will be given absolute authority to explore our new power, the Traveler's relics, and all associated domains. We are no longer in the realm of pure science. We require an order of mysteries and witches to tend to them." Not an hour later, a fallen catch threw off its stealth and began a declaration burn toward 4 Vesta. The 4-armed predators had traced one of the earthward ships back through all of its erratic course changes and to the reef. They came in search of the source of these blue apekin. A salvo of coherent matter guns gutted the catch. Blink-quick death for the mighty ship, ancient fury compressing matter into a relativistic pinhead. It was a waste of weapons that could have been recharged or reloaded, however, and the Baron in command had already scattered his skiffs like camouflage seeds. The fallen raiders came down all over the reef and cut their way inside. The Awoken, young to mortality, terrified of death, fled in fear. Mara, Aldrin, and Suraido rallied as many as they could. Sur fought in a powered combat shell, but Mara needed to be seen vulnerable, silver-haired and narrow-eyed, hurling herself at the enemy. She fought with a pistol and dagger, and her brother moved like a wraith at her flank. Her people were ashamed of their timidity. No more were the fallen scuttling alien predators. Now they were an indignity, an offense to regal privilege to be met with a snarl and a rifle shot. The Awoken saw their desperation, how the stump-limbed dregs stumbled forward emaciated, how the Vandals cringed from battle as they peered off wall panels, desperate for salvage to please their captains. Armored Suraido met the fallen Baron in zero-gravity combat above his spider tank and shot him dead, one adamant shaft through plate and throat. Ether hissed into the vacuum. Sur threw herself upon a spider tank that clung to the Sacred Fire's hull. Laughing in joy, she cut into the tank's barrel and threw a charge inside, knowing its next vengeful shot would be meant for the Sacred Fire's main habitat drum, and that she would die in a catastrophic misfire. The tank fired. The charge detonated. Suraido was thrown clear, utterly unharmed. "That was where I should have died," she said in wonder, and in her mind she was smiling in the face of her queen. Card 5, Telic 1. Mara made one more attempt, and only one, to call her scattered people home. She had hoped the assault would convince them that they had a responsibility to the Reef, to come home and repair the damage they had caused. It went poorly, however, for though her tech witches were able to amplify her bond to her people through the augments Kelda had developed, she was only one voice in a maelstrom. Her Awoken had sensitive antennae in the metaphysical sense and could not hear the plea through the clamor. Also, the communications engineer kept forgetting to call Mara Majesty or Queen. "Good news," Aldrin told her with the grim delight he always showed after a debacle he had survived. "Ilin and I went through the fallen communications log. The Baron never transmitted our position to his Kel. He wanted the prize himself. We remain secure." "The Baron might have planted a time-delayed beacon," Mara warned him. "Never underestimate these beings. They've lived in the void longer than us." "I already admire them," Aldrin confessed. "They've lost so much. Some of them even ritually dismember themselves, Mara, to prove they have the strength to grow back the missing limbs. I tell you that even if we are doomed to dwindle to go extinct, those fallen may outlive us." Mara made a dry note in her log that her brother had at last discovered his true people. For her part, Suraido wandered about in a daze, filled with joy to be alive and grief, and she no longer knew the day she would die. "In you, all things are possible," she told Mara. "I live because of you." When Mara saw her string her mighty bow, the limbs coiled behind her leg and around her opposite arm, she was glad beyond telling that Sur had survived. In time, Mara appointed paladins to oversee her new military, as Alice Lee had done during the Theodicy War. She created talented starfarers as corsairs to scour the asteroid belt in utmost secrecy and to establish the routes and caches that would support the covert motion of Awoken ships. Most of all, she charged her brother with the mission that occupied her thoughts. "Brother," she said, "never again can I allow my people to be divided. We must offer them more than shielding ice and cold habitat cylinders and the warrens of Vesta. We must make a culture, a thread that binds us all in pride and wonder at the mystery of ourselves. Nowhere does culture flourish better than in a city. Gather in one place," Aldrin warned her, "and you make yourself a target." Mara had considered this and found an answer. "Go forth and find me a power unknown to all the other powers of this world. Return it to me, and I shall make it the cornerstone of my new city, where the Awoken shall dream of all they have been and all that is yet to come." So Aldrin went out voyaging among the worlds, swift as a blue-shipped ghost. In time, he returned to the Reef with a creature not larger than his hand, saying, "Behold, sister, the lie that makes itself true. This is an Ahamkara." Card 6, Telic 2. It was Mara alone who established a covenant with that young Ahamkara, which chose the use name Riven in honor of its host. It was Mara alone whose singular will and unity of purpose saved the Awoken from that which we now name the Anthem Anatheme. For there was in Mara very little division between reality as is and reality as desired. She was confident in her centuries of purpose and patient with the winding way by which the river of methods reaches the objective ocean. Blessed are those who in their absolute selfhood become selfless. Unappetizing are those who in their truest self-knowledge exclude the possibility of self-deceit. Mara, said Aldrin, Queen's brother, why do you forbid me to speak to the Ahamkara? The secret is mine alone, said Mara Queen. She knew that her brother had only widened the gap between he as was, which is called Noom, and he as he would be, which is named Cost. Begone to the outer world. I require 3. This was when Sur Ido, having spoken to Keldawaj and Asila, at last came before her queen. Kneeling, she said, Your Majesty, Keldawaj says you are a god, for there is no difference between your desire and reality. Yet I know you desire things before they ever become real. Asila says that you are keeping a secret from your brother and that he must never know. I think the secret is thus. You are now a god because one day you will become a god, and a god is not temporal. Your brother is not a god because he will never become a god. Shall I worship you? Sur, Mara said, falling to her knees, clutching her beloved's face between shaking hands. Sur, on the day you worship me, you cannot love me anymore, for to worship is to yield all power, and I cannot love what is no power over me. At this point, the Ahamkara coiled around her neck, yawned, and showed its fangs, for there was a crevice between what was and what was wanted. I see, Sur Ido said. Then to me you are not yet a god. Although in time the knowledge of what Mara would become pushed them apart, it was kind of a happy push, as a friend might urge a beloved companion onward to a distant opportunity, and their days together were spent gladly. Card 7, Tyrannicide 1. Mara's death began in this mark. Later would come Eris Morn, Osiris, Toland, and all the other accessories of the majestic suicide. Later would come the Reef's tentative entanglements with Vex and Cabal, Fallen and Hive, and the fateful decision to intervene when the House of Wolves turned earthward to conquer the last human city. Later, there would be stories here untold, the Ahamkara and the subcreation of the Dreaming City, the Shatterstone fury of the Reef Wars, Brother Aldrin's journey to that fell garden, and the great sweeping plots whose beginning and consequences have entirely implunged for the sake of elegance, or as of the Route 81, redacted for the sake of secrets yet untold. Here is where the beginning began, at the moment when Mara bolted awake from the dream. Her circle of Techians lay with her in a misty, winter-cold chamber, and they came back groggily, their arguments stuttering with resync. She had dreamt a thought of absolute simplicity and perfection, and the thought had become a tooth and bitten her. It left a wound shaped like X. Mara seized a pane of crystal paper, flashed it rigid and receptive with a touch, and wrote, I dreamt of sword and bomb. I dreamt of the self-honing blade that has cut itself so fine it pierces the world and thus becomes the world. It is self-honing because it constantly whets itself against itself. I dreamt of death bearing this blade, or of something so closely allied with death as to be its synonym, so that to separate them would require a knife sharper than sharpness. Death raised up the blade and said, I cut all and all I cut. Ayit. Then death cut the bomb, and the bomb was broken and could not fire. I was in the bomb. I knew that death was the cut verb, and that its only verb was to cut. Shapes and gliders. I dreamt of existence as a game of cellular automata. In this metaphor, there were only two things, shapes in the game world and rules of the game world. The rules were the rules of life and death. I understood that the sword was the desire to escape existence as a shape in the game and to become the rule that made the shapes. This rule said only live or die. It had no other outputs. It could not keep secrets. Against it was the desire to become a shape so complex that it could within itself play other games. What will soon be? I dreamt that the sword that was death and rule sought out complexity and cut it to reveal the simplicity within. I knew that soon we would be cut, for we were complex and full of secrets. I knew that it was coming. I knew that the stroke would fail and that I had to stop it. How can a bomb make use of a sword? How can the rule that separates life from death be killed? I must go to the Dreaming City and use the Oracle engine, Mara told her Techians. Prepare my ship. Card 8, Tyrannicide 2. 10 times and once more, Mara asked the Oracle engine to show her the sword that was death and the way it would appear. 10 times and once more, the Oracle engine showed Mara an image of her family. First it showed her Sur Ido, laughing and bright with strength, who could recede and later return. Then it showed her Aldrin, her brother, who explored the ruins of the fallen worlds and sought out challenges to test himself. Then it showed Mara her own face and lingered on the secret brightness of her eyes. Last of all, leaving Mara imperious with disdain toward her own feelings, curtly aloof toward all who asked her what troubled her, it showed her Osana, who had remained behind. Mara dwelt on this puzzle, a mother who remained behind, a sister with secrets, a brother who hunted and explored, a woman who was plain and fierce. She understood then that the answer to her question lay within herself, and that to defeat what was coming, she would need a perfect understanding of herself. Isolation would be her watchword, for an isolation system is the easiest of all to understand. First of all, Mara went into the gardens and planted a flower for her mother, who she thought must still live, though she might by now have forgotten her first daughter and her first son. "Mother," she said, "I asked to be your sister rather than your daughter, and so I denied you the chance to tell me your secret, the mother truth that is mapped in the negative space defined by the lines mothers tell their daughters. Well, here are my secrets. I love you. I have always loved you. Without you, I could have never been anything at all." Then she went to speak to her brother, but Aldrin was away on Mars, and she found only his empty chambers, the half-sharpened knives and racks of pistols. She knelt in grief and touched her hands to the floor where his pacing boots had scuffed the asteroid stone smooth. This was the shape of their siblinghood now, the pursuit of absences. Last of all, Mara went to Sur Ido. Sur was making a list of incredibly stupid and fatal tasks to post on a Guardian bounty board. "I want to tell you the truth," Mara said. "Ask me a question. If you take any positive integer and halve it if it's even, but triple it and add 1 if it's odd, and you repeat this process forever, will you always, eventually, reach 1? Sur Ido demanded. "Sur, my faithful wrath," Mara said. "Please take my openness seriously, though I'm sure Ilan could answer your math problem." "Okay," Sur looked at her curiously. "Then here's my question. What's gotten into you? Why are you acting like this?" "Can we talk?" Mara asked her. Card 9, Tyrannicide 3. Mara and Sur Ido go out into space and kick off the haul, wearing Corsair skin pressure suits and slim tethers. The stars circle them like hard-focused candles, like the diadems of 1,000,000,000 dancers. Sur Ido pulls herself close and touches helmets with Mara. "We're alone. What's happened, Mara? You've always been, private," Mara suggests. "Mysterious and reclusive, I was going to say." "A sword can be a part of a bomb if the sword strike is the detonation mechanism," Mara says. "It's impossible for a cellular automata game to change its own rules, but it is possible to create subgames with their own rules, and for those subgames to yield advantage in the master game." "That's cool," Sur says. "You know, when you talk like that, what you're actually saying is, I don't want anyone to understand me, but I want them to understand that they don't understand me." "Yeah," Mara admits, and then hoarsely she makes herself say, "Sur, I have this secret, this thing I did, and I don't know if anyone can know it without hating me forever." "I had a secret too," Sur reminds her, "the thing I did. It's nothing compared to mine. nothing at all. Having had some long experience hating you and then giving it up, I think it would be hard for me to go back. Suer's strong hand settles on the small of Mara's back. They twirl on upward, rotating around a point between them, their 1,000-kilometer tethers slowly unfurling. Do you want to tell me? No, Mara says, but I think I have to. Okay, Your Majesty, what did you do that made Alice Lee throw blackberry tea in your face? I was first, Mara says, and she explains the missing half, the first half of the sentence. I made the rules and the initial conditions that deceived her into believing she herself had decided. It ends like that, where the rest picks up. Sir Ido looks at her in expressionless silence. Sir Ido's hands stroke the seam between Mara's skinsuit and the glassy petals of her helmet. Long ago, this woman betrayed her oath and went to serve the dais room, a woman who cried out in anguish at the curse of physicality and the possibility of suffering. Long ago, this woman threw away her whole life to punish the highest crime she could imagine, the denial of transcendent divinity to those who might have claimed it. You're the devil, Suer says. You're the lone power who made death. You allow the possibility of evil. You might be responsible for more preventable sufferings than anything that has ever existed. Mara cannot shake her head or even nod. Well, Suer says, if you haven't, none of us would be here. I guess I don't see what else you could have done if you cared about those we left behind, if you wanted us to be able to go back and help in the fight. She leans forward and very gently kisses the inside of her helmet, where it meets Mara's in her mind. In that place that is bound to all other Awoken, Mara feels the touch of gentle lips. Suer suddenly looks sly. You know, Mara, I don't think you could have confessed anything at all unless it were a way of keeping a deeper secret. What's really going on? There are many ways to godhood, Mara tells her. The belt of Orion glitters on her helmet like the 3-star rating left by some hive entities Suer once killed. One way is to kill all that is killable, so all that remains must be immortal. Another is the road I have walked, mostly by accident. One of these ways is closer to the sword, and one is closer to the bomb. If the bomb can defeat the sword by the standard of the sword, then the bomb has claim to primacy. Never mind, Suer sighs. Seen anything cool on Crow surveillance lately? Card 10, Tyrannicide 4. Later, much later. It is the night before the Day of Screams. Mara meditates cross-legged in a cradle of null gravity. Varix had told her more than once how the Fallen speak of the Awoken as sterile, unable to regrow their flesh, cursed to bear their scars forever. Also how they think of the Awoken as self-twinned, coexisting with their own shadows. Didn't ancient Inanna, Queen of Heaven, descend into the underworld to confront her shadow twin, sister Ereshkigal? Inanna was judged full of hubris and executed. You cannot defeat a thing that is synonymous with death except on its own territory. You cannot fear and flee from death. You must face it. Death is a sword, and the sword is like a cross point, like a bridge, and a bridge may be walked 2 ways. The plan exists in her mind alone, although beloved Eris has by necessity learned most of it. The Techians did not know the whole plan, although they will position the Harbingers upon the threshold. Even sweet, capable Petra does not know the whole plan. Aldrin knows nothing of the whole plan. He has kept more and more to himself, building up secrets and schemes. All Mara knows and pities, because he needs Mara and thinks he can get her attention by keeping secrets from her. Secrets are her virtue and the virtue of her nemesis, the being whose existence she deduced from the analogy of family the Oracle engine showed her. Mara will begin the end of that queen's brother today. She knows what that means for the fate of her own, an eye for an eye. She must now think of the fate of the entire cosmos, and of her tender, half-assembled answer to the cold sword logic of the hive. She must not grieve. She must not fear. Was Inanna afraid when she descended? Mara is not going to be outclassed by some ancient fable. After all, Mara's name is death. But there is one more thing she admires most about Inanna over all the myths and catabasis. Inanna went to conquer. Card 11, Tyrannicide 5. She closes her eyes. Oryx's throne world smashes through her fleet, the bubble of everted scream space pulverizing rock, metal, and flesh as mere matter surrenders to the will-made fact of the taken king. Somewhere, Aldrin roars defiance. This is the moment of absolute sacrifice, the incarnation of Awoken doom, to give up their lives in defense of the world they once abandoned. The sense of their great dying rips at Mara like a sob. She feels her Techians preparing emergency self-gates. Shirochi reaches out to her, a wordless, urgent need for Mara to live, and it takes all the cold, impassive remove of Mara's millennia to turn that hand away. The shockwave strikes. Mara dies. In one way, she is vaporized with her catch, the bonds between the very particles of her body questioned by the harrowing logic of Oryx's weapon and found inessential. The mechanism of devastation is spontaneous fission. The author of the devastation is laughing in joy. In another way, a more true and symbolic way, she is impaled on Oryx's blade. She has thrown all of her might at him, and he has answered. He has snuffed her fledgling divinity and meager claim to royalty. He has exposed Mara to the raw and caustic hostility of his high war. She has been defeated by the sword logic. She dances down the blade and steps into his throne world. The harbingers give her the gate and she takes the step. She is dead, consumed by Oryx. She is dead in his will, his ascendant realm. There was no other way inside except this true way. Inanna at least gave her people some warning. She told her minister to have her worshippers lament, drum, pray, and lacerate their buttocks. Inanna told her minister to beg the gods to save her. Mara has not. Instead, she has enlisted Eris and several million mad dancing guardians to go knock off the god who killed her. It is, on that level, a very simple bank heist. Get yourself taken into the treasury as treasure, and when the owner dies, break back out with his stuff. But even Inanna had to send everyone away before she passed through the last door. Mara thinks of everyone she has ever known, all of the people she has lost, even back to the Yang Liwei and the ray of light in the deepest dark. She's there again, on the tether, falling into the mystery. Her brother is crying out after her, trying to follow, and she cannot look back. She has been thinking of a logic of her own, of secrets and hidden designs. The universe has not grown simpler in its age. Wherever life can begin, it has begun, and even in some places where sensible folk expect it should not. The great tendency has been towards intricacy, towards sophistication, toward deep thought and richer ways of being. A sword is everywhere edged, but the pieces of a bomb do not at all look like weapons until they are assembled. Oryx's throne world tries to tear her body and psyche into a quintillion screaming pieces, but Mara has survived the inchoate primordial chaos before space and time. She has retained her selfhood through far worse than this, and she has patience for eons. Eris will succeed, the Guardians will play their part. When the power of this world is free for the taking, Mara will take it. Not as the victor taking spoils, but as a scavenger takes a prize component for her masterwork. When a pawn reaches the far side of a chessboard, it may be promoted to a queen. And what hatches when you promote a queen? What new board does she claim her place on? Mara knows. She settles in for the long wait, entirely alone, almost at peace with it. Card 12, Regent. I see. And our wolf ships? All destroyed but the Calyx Sin, and she is badly wounded, burning for Pallas now. Galliots? Those that remained at the outpost are still in good condition for now, and we have some still in reserve at Pallas. How many? 12. And how many shipwrights? I'm afraid I cannot say. I see. Divert Halam to civilian defense. Send Kamala and anyone we can spare for a covert SAR run. Avoid hostile engagements at all costs. If they find survivors, notify me immediately. Wilco that. Signing off, Commander. The comms light goes off and Petra takes a deep breath for calm. She leans forward to flip switches and adjust her dials. Her hands are shaking. Commander. She was never supposed to be a commander. All she'd ever wanted was to serve and protect Mara. And now Mara was alive. She was alive somewhere, she'd promised. Retaking the yoke of her own galliot, Petra sets a course for the tangled shore. She cycles through her comms channel as she flies. The hive are swarming the outposts, and the disciples are demanding escort in their evac. Devi is MIA. Guardian jump ship after Guardian jump ship is throwing itself at the monstrous hive ship, only to be repelled by some kind of defense shield. 100 Seeders are landing on Ceres. Halam is evacuating every civilian he can to the shielded inner cities. 200 more Seeders on Palace. Skyburner forces inbound, armed to the teeth. Wolf allies defecting. Devi is found. Petra cannot turn off the radio. She cannot stop listening. She can scarcely breathe. She wants to reverse course and fly her ship into the eye of the flagship. She wants to wreck herself against its ugly, scrimshawled hull and scream so clear and true as she dies that wretched beast will hear her and know what atrocity he has committed. She wants to believe Mara is alive, but how when she cannot feel her, when she does not know every step of the accursed plan? She approaches Thieves' Landing from a reckless angle and then cuts fast and low across the lashed-together wreckage of the shore. The air is thick with dust and debris and shimmering immaterial harbinger matter. It is impossible to see more than a click out, so she follows her radar. Unconsciously, she holds her breath, and then, there it is, the watchtower. Petra sighs through clenched teeth. It's whole, unharmed. Card 13, Ilin. In the bomb-walled passages of the place called Processes and Services, the screams have stopped. I've never heard it quiet before, Lycia whispers. Are they gone? But she knows, as Portia and Nasia know, as Ilin herself knows, that the Taken have not gone. Not very long ago, Processes and Services was the place Ilin and her sisters came to make the Desolates, items of technology imbued with the husk-dry power of Oryx's Taken. Ilin was the first to stand as living conduit, the first of the Techians to use that deep interior fault line, that fundamental Awoken schism as a bridge. She remembers the endless, awful, infinitely malicious screams of the things. But she also remembers the whispers, and if the screams are silent now, the whispers are louder than ever. Quickly, Ilin hisses, before Petra is informed. Any breach of Processes and Services triggers an alert, and while they were crafty in their intrusion, even minute body heat and motion of the air will be detected. We must ask our questions and go. Brave Portia leads them to the cell she selected for their use, a vacuum-gaped sphere of relic iron coated inside and out by signal-deadening spinfoil. It hovers in suspension, a black miniature traveler, a pearl formed around a hideous interior flaw. Ilin opens a needle-thin access port. The stink of ozone rolls out. There's a Taken Vandal within, flexing and shuddering through nameless permutations of blissful agony. Nasia, she whispers. Quiet, precise Nasia slips a whisker of cable into the port, guiding it through impossible twists and encrypted locks with the caress of her augment's fields. Ilin rubs her temples. The whispers are loud here. The whispers that haunt the place where the Queen's voice once sounded. Whispers that sounded so much like missing Shuro-Chi and the others from the Queen's flagship. They should have self-gated to the Dreaming City if the battle went wrong. They should have come home safe. What if they need help? What if Petra has kept their fate from Ilin? Would she do that, Petra, Coven's daughter raised by witches? Things have not been easy between the Regent Commander and the Techians. Ready. Nasia offers the splayed end of the cable to them. Be careful, all of you. Their augments sink in a stutter of light, like a sunbeam passing over a field of diamonds. Inquisitive Lyciel forms the first question. Do you hear us? The Viper Strike rush of the Taken Thing's will comes at them. It is powerful, but familiar. Ilin deflects its demand. I think it hears us, she says with a grim chuckle. We know Taken too well, don't we? There were fears once that the Guardians would be appalled by the Taken-empowered armor, but Petra was right. Guardians will wear anything that gives them power, whether tactical or social. Together, they unfold the taken thing's brutally elegant interior geometries, seeking the threads of connection that reach out across space and time. "Shiro," Ilin whispers, "we have heard you. Do you hear us?" That is when she makes the fatal mistake. She thinks of the time before Saturn. She thinks of Shiro-chi and Aldrin and Mara. She wants that time back. She wants... In the non-space around them, great jaws snap shut. "Riven!" brave Portia screams. Ilin was prepared for taken, folded perfect things, elegant and thus manageable, but this absolute appetite, this impossible will. She speaks the secret word of stasis that will crash their augments and end the communication. She does not know if she is in time. Quiet Nasia is screaming. Inquisitive Lysiel is screaming. The screaming has begun again. Card 14. Nitrogen. "Lightning!" Koro yells, waking Talia Ross from an uneasy sleep. "It's lightning! At last! At last!" He's gone out in a cloak and a rebreather to dance in joy. White light flashes through the film of Koro's plastic hovel. Talia thinks of arc grenades and the barren scorn cutting through the walls of her lab. She shudders, counts the arrows in her quiver, and tries to go back to sleep. She can't. She puts on the bow and quiver, joins Koro outside. He's sifting the lightning-struck earth, grinning like a fool. A burrowing insect slips between his fingers. He pinches after it, but only gets one slim antenna. "I need nitrogen to grow plants," he explains, pointing up to the sky in the mist of contained air that surrounds this part of the reef. When the containment field builds up enough charge, it arcs to the ground, and the lightning bolts spit nitrogen into the air, which fertilizes the soil. Isn't that amazing? Talia stares at him. You can't seriously want to farm here. Home, civilized proper home, is a sealed habitat, a cool, clean place full of light. Why not? We're refugee people now, Talia. You think things are gonna get better? He points to the bright stars of habitats and ships above. All those are targets. We have to learn to live off our land. We are a refugee people because things keep killing us. Talia leaves angry boot prints in the soil. You won't have to be out here long. Petrovenge will lock down the reef, or the queen will come back. Or, you really think she survived? Koro brushes his hands clean. My Felda sure didn't, and she was tough. Real tough. It took legions of guardians to kill Oryx. The queen, I know she was something special, but she's no guardian. I think I could still feel her, Talia says stubbornly. Sometimes. Who knows what can get into our head these days? A new star ignites overhead. Koro squints. Guardianship, he says. You can tell by the way they come in, like they just don't have a care. Maybe they'll come hunt the scorn. Maybe one day Talia will be a scientist again in a proper lab with a proper place to sleep, like the days after Skolas. I've got other hopes. Koro slaps his thighs, bounds to his feet, and as if he was a true prophet, heads for his hovel just a moment before his baby bursts out crying. You hear about that one fallen on Hygeia? He pays for people willing to maintain a few remote telescopes. You work for the spider? Talia cries, but he's willing to pay in hard goods, willing to help people move, even willing to provide security. Koro pulls back his hovel's flap. Want to help me with the kids? Someone's got to explain why they shouldn't be afraid of lightning. Card 15. Refusal. Petra has her welcome for Zavala all planned out. He will say something stentorian, which, while it is technically a greeting, Petra will also read as reproach or condescension, or perhaps paternal concern. Petra will smirk at Zavala like she really doesn't care, so that he knows he's nobody, a little guy, a bureaucrat, far beneath her anger. But at this exact moment, a shard of cyanide-laced ice from the far reaches of the Oort cloud will penetrate the reef's ravaged defenses and smash into Zavala with such velocity that he becomes a thin ooze across the floor, a scum. When Zavala's ghost begins to rebuild him, Petra will say smoothly, "No, allow me." Then she will brandish a mop. The hatch opens. Cade 6 backs his way through, talking to Zavala. Whatever you've seen, whatever you've read, it's worse. These people need our... Cade. Petra half-consciously adopts Mara's fey move, her insistent and remote posture. Her throat jams up and she actually coughs aloud against the sudden grief. You brought... Zavala grinds his way into the room. An obelisk of city stone is screwed across a solar system to invade Petra's space. He very politely answers Cade before turning to her. The fact is, Cade, the Queen did us a favor by leaving the reef in chaos. As long as the Fallen are here killing each other, we have room to rebuild. Now he nods to Petra. Regent Commander, pleased to see you well. Likewise, I'm sure. Petra feels in her heart that the Queen saw the reef as a protector of Earth and its people, if perhaps not the protector of the traveler. It still kills her to hear Zavala speak openly of the reef as a distraction. Cade had a proposal, she says, that he wanted us both to hear. Yes, I did. Cade prances between them like a flare meant to draw off heat-seeking fury passing between Petra and Zavala. The city's fall drove him deep into his jester persona, devil-may-care and fancy-free. He hasn't quite recovered. It's like this, Petra. We're bringing a lot of Earth's lonely people into the arms of the city. I've got to talking to Varix about the situation out here, and I figured, hey, maybe it's time we extend that policy to you. He sobers. I want to invite the Reef Awoken into the city. Abandon this place to Varix, to Dead Orbit, to whoever wants it. It's hell out here, Petra. You won't survive. Zavala's eyes are locked on Petra. He burns with a magnificent Stentorian power. Does the Regent Commander have enough control over the reef to execute a withdrawal? Despite your best efforts, Petra snaps and then suddenly she cannot stop. She is too furious, too hot with grief. At least Cade is honorable enough to acknowledge what you've done to us. Every fallen house you shatter washes up on our shores. Every hive god and cabal tyrant you attract goes through us to get to you. No wonder she couldn't stand the sight of you, Zavala. You've forsaken your people. She bites back the rest. How she wishes that back in 2000 and whatever, when the darkness hurled mankind off the height of its golden age to plummet 16 centuries into barbarism, it had done just a slightly better job. That's not true. That's her broken heart talking, but oh, does it talk loud. She was a charlatan, Zavala says quietly, fighting a war that existed only in her mind, dragging you all behind her. Any of you who will admit that are welcome in my city, but I will not take in whatever conspiracies she left unfinished. If you come to us, you come to join the city. No. Stop being the Queen's people. Stop remembering her promise. You're afraid, Petra tells the Titan of Titans. That's why she can never trust you. Go back to your travelers, Zavala. Thank you for your concern, Cade, but the reef has its own purposes, and you would mourn your foolishness if we abandoned them. Petra, there are purposes, she snarls, intended by our Queen. Card 16. Fleet. They lock onto his ship so far out that he actually grunts in shock, but they have seen stealth tech in action before among the Fallen and against Oryx, so he should not be surprised. The message comes: state your business or be fired upon by the orders of the Regent Commander. Arak Jalal chuckles at the title. He remembers Petra's time in the tower, her simmering impatience to be back out in the black sky. She got her wish. Perhaps she regrets it. She was right about one thing. At least, this is where everything that matters happens. If Dead Orbit had ruled the city, there would have been a fleet to meet Gaul. It's Arak Jalal of Dead Orbit, he says cheerfully. I'm here to speak to the Regent Commander Petra Venge. I am not an emissary from the city. I come on my own accord to discuss matters of fleet. Jalal has been to the reef before, but never through the proper channels. He's a little surprised when Petra Venge meets him at his transmat zone. He'd expected an escort to a waiting area where he'd be given a sense he's not a priority. However, Petra is an operative, not a politician. She can't bear to delay action for the sake of theater. He likes that. Arak Jalal, she shakes his hand firmly. Does he feel a whisper of some faint telekinetic force against his throat? She can do that knife trick, and what else? Welcome back to your ancestors' home. Regent Commander, how does that role suit you? A reminder that they are both out of place. It's temporary. She beckons him to walk. You want to discuss ships. We have talented labor but no safe yards for them to do their work. If you can supply a site, he checks her with a slash of his hand, a spacewalker's gesture. I came for salvage rights. Salvage? Around Saturn. I want your permission to go through the debris swarm for materials and space frames. The dead will, of course, be returned. Petra is silent. Arak expects her, being a spacer, to be a pragmatist, to see that the Reef doesn't have the spare capacity to process this salvage and that the inner solar system needs as many ships as it can raise. There is also the question of Oryx's weapon and whether it can be defeated if the dreadnought ever stirs again. But Petra remains silent. The wounds are still too fresh? I apologize. It seems a shame to leave those resources for the fallen or to drift into Saturn. She speaks. Earthborn, did you mourn for her? He thinks she will know if he lies. I respected her, yes, but I despise the way she seemed entitled to us all. I never regret choosing the path I did. I was awoken to continue the search we started long ago, the quest for worlds worthy of our lives. Petra turns her back and goes. He stares after her. Only after a long minute does he understand. She cannot say any of the things she wants to say and cannot bring herself to tell the lies that she should. She refuses him. She refuses the choice. Jalal pities her a little. She will never be free of her. Card 17 of Earth and the Reef. Dear Master Ives, I write to you in behalf of all the cryptarchs on Earth in sympathy for all those who died in the service to your queen. We Earthborn feel your loss and hope this tragedy will usher in a new era. We have made great strides in unraveling a richer and deeper history of Earth and its colonies, a history buried below merely ordinary truths. This content is, of course, far too sensitive to publish generally. We have long feared that if it were intercepted by Her Majesty your Queen, it would be denied or manipulated to serve some need of her own. Some of these discoveries relate to the nature of our awakening, while others point to the occurrence of journeys like our own, journeys that may have had troubling results. All of this scholarship would benefit from the cross-reference and critical comparison with your own collected records. We hope you agree that this knowledge is far more important than any schism that once defined our people. We look forward to cooperation between our libraries, correspondence between our scholars, and the beginning of a new intellectual golden age, a time of lucidity and truth. Respectfully, Master Rahul. Dear Master Rahul, we, the cryptarchs of the Reef, appreciate your sympathy for the devastation that our people suffered in your defense. We likewise express our sorrow for your recent loss and, of course, apologize for the length of time it has taken us to respond to your requests. We were determined to give our reply the full deliberation it deserved. It is our unanimous consensus that you are vile, sir, that you are a grasping wretch, that you would attempt to use our misfortune to solicit access to our vaults and records, which I assure you are far more extraordinary than whatever half-eaten corruptions you've discovered among your ruins, is quite appalling. We will, however, happily review any data or records you believe would be of interest to our efforts. You'll also be curious to know that reams of new discoveries are being generated daily since your traveler cast out the light to refuel your guardians. Let us hope you are wise enough to understand its message. With all the respect that is due, Master Ives. Card 18, Pilgrimage. Zavala lowers his brow to the Ionian earth. It feels like the respectful thing to do. There's a big coiled ammonite fossil right under the thin topsoil though, and he knocks his forehead on it. The pain and the blowing sulfur dust make him sneeze. Humbly I come, he says, almost laughing, to speak to thee. Ikora said this was the place, Io, a world still half-born, connected as if by an untorn umbilical to the traveler. I wanted to say thank you. He finds he's looking up at Jupiter. He's accustomed to seeing the traveler above the city, so he fastens on the nearest huge floating sphere as the proxy. He forces his eyes down to the soil again. Thank you for what you did to Gaul. Ikora tells him that if you listen with the right ears, you can hear the traveler's last conversation with Io. As if the matter of terraforming an entire moon with Earth-like gravity and biosphere is only a matter of rhetoric and instruction. Well, isn't that the challenge in the end? Not just assembling the power to do something, but convincing people to do it. No, not even that. Not convincing or coercing. Traveler knows he is tempted sometimes, but teaching them how to think as you think, how to value what you value, even giving them the ethics required to understand your valuation, so that you can trust them to make the choices you would, even when you're not around to father them. Zavala wishes he were half as good as a teacher as he is a Titan. Then maybe he could allow himself to relax a little and let others take care of things. Except last time he let his guard down, last time he dared to think they were triumphant with Oryx repelled, Siva contained, Vex befuddled, Cabal huddled in their bunkers and too stubborn to come out, Gaul turned up in a storm and nearly destroyed the city, the Traveler, and everything Zavala loves. Did I fail you? He asks the bone-coiled dirt. Am I the reason you had to wake up? Because I couldn't stop Gaul by myself? In the giddiness of victory, he's declared this their new golden age. But now he thinks that he may have misunderstood the Traveler's awakening. He has always, he hopes, been a brave man, but he is almost too afraid to ask this next question. Is this just our next age of triumph, or is something worse on the way? The bruise where he headbutted the fossil throbs. History, Zavala once told someone, is a question of armor. How much can you survive and keep on living? More than this, more than what's hit them so far. But how much more? And if the next escalation is a consequence of the Traveler's awakening, will it be Zavala's fault? Duty is a puzzle. The harder you work, the more it seems to weigh. That reminds Zavala of Basho, his favorite poet, and one of the hot spring Basho once visited to see the murder stone which killed birds and insects that came too near. He has a horrible idea of the Traveler as that stone, surrounding by buzzing flies all shaped like ghosts. You're doing it again, his ghost warns him. I know that expression. I know, Zavala says. I just worry. Card 19, Flayed. Spider's lair, Petra in her element, light-footed, light of thought. She keeps herself open to the place. Heat of packed bodies and machinery, bite of ether in the air. Money and the promise of money and the things money can make people do. Knives, pistols, danger like static charge. He's no good for you, she says. And he's no good for me. If you turn him over, I'll be happy. You like me happy, don't you, Spider? The Spider grumbles. Very well. You will take him alive? He must have stores of ether, and no matter what Varric says, that ether is mine. He's agreed. She has what she came for, which is proof that the Spider actually wants this capture to succeed. As Regent, she can never tell when she succeeds. She's constantly making decisions that will only be clearly assessed by historians. Here, she is the Wrath again. She feels brave. We'll deal with the ether once we have him. Petra slides the hood over her head and dismisses herself back into the crowd. Two dregs barter salvage with tokens like fingernail-sized knives. Slatted light falls through the thick clouds of adulterated ether to cut hard lines across the torn bannerless fringes some of the fallen wear. A Cabal deserter, hunched against the wall in a baggy pressure sack, sells the location of Red Legion arms caches for loads of raw glimmer. Petra pauses for a moment on the threshold, looks back longingly at the chaos within, wishes that anything would happen to make her stay. She goes out into these shadows on the surface. Soon, as clear as the visions that sometimes come to her, she knows there's something moving quick and stealthily up ahead. She keeps her pace steady, checks her knife and pistol. So few of us remain, Petra Venge. The voice betrays a bearing, and she catches just a glimpse of a structure against the background noise, the hood of a cloak, the arch of lips. Who's there? She challenges. It's a man. His movements are erratic, shrouded in a rhythmic noise that mimics the chaos of nature. He knows how to seem like an accidental thing, a tumbled heap, a brush of wind. Petra, if only we could go back to those days before. Aldrin, she gasps. He is here. He has come to take the regency and execute his sister's will. She'll be free again to act without cruel deliberation and agonizing uncertainty, free to meet every challenge instead of making them for herself. No, this must be an illusion. It's too much of everything she wants. She searches with senses beyond sight for something capable of casting this into her mind. A scion flayer? A hive wizard? She trusted you with all of this, all of us, and you gave it to the mercy of the light. She feels the intent to murder and she knows it is meant for her. She draws and acquires a target faster than a sound can cross from mind to tongue, but her sight picture captures only darkness. 2 slow heartbeats. When no shot or knife comes, she begins to withdraw. Nothing follows her to her ship. Card 20, Jensam Scribe. Asher Mir stands looking at himself in the mirror. He is shirtless. With the hand that still feels, he reaches to the shoulder that doesn't feel. He taps his fingers against the rigid metal there, then taps his way to his clavicle. The boundary between metal and skin is neither uniform nor tidy. Metal gives way to a sheath of hard, keratinized skin that puckers and blooms and splits like he is a snake sloughing its skin. Keratinized skin gives way to toughened calluses, ugly with bruising and overstressed veins. He spreads his palm against his chest and holds it there, as if covering it up will make it go away. Then, with effort, he drops his hand and forces himself to look for a long time. What will happen, he wonders, when the machinoforming reaches his lungs? It is already painful to cough. You should go to the Reef. Asher sucks in a breath through his teeth and snatches at his shirt. He struggles to put it on, then whirls around to find Ikora Ray leaning in his doorway. Unforgivable intrusion, he spits. Declare yourself plainly when you approach, and schedule your so-called visits in advance. I was not expecting you. Ikora exchanges a brief glance with Awoken, then goes on. Tyra believes that Ives or another one of the Reef cryptarchs might be able to help. A fool's errand. The cryptarchs are preoccupied by idle theory. The answer to my problem lies here, with the Vex. If that's so, why did you come with me to see Osiris? Asher fights his way into his robes, fastening snaps and ties so quickly that he misaligns several. Because he is a useless, self-obsessed wretch. Ikora raises an eyebrow and waits. Asher sneers as he smooths both hands across his belly, trying to tidy his silhouette. I concede your point, but I do not have to acknowledge it. The Techians then, my hidden say. Asher stiffens, his head snaps up. You're hidden, he barks as hot tears well in his eyes. Your hidden know nothing about this illness. The Queen's witches, if they still live, know nothing about this illness. No one can stop it. I am beginning to believe there is no sense in even trying. Card 21, Exegesis. As I have made it my life's work to seek as much truth as history can offer, I chronicle these dreams in hope that my subjective understanding might provide some path to truth for others. Infinite sadness. I stand at the bow of a ship, crying as the stars streak the skies. I am trying to chronicle trillions of star systems at once, searching for a single planet. A faceless companion asks why I look so sad, and I showed her a photo of a globular mass or a dual-ringed planet, depending on how you hold it. How much did you pay for that? She asks. Everything I have, I respond. Then the stars stop shrieking and the ship crumbles apart. We fall into nothing, and I awake. Fissuring warmth. I am running from an encroaching burn of blue light. I jump from rock to rock as they are the only things with gravity. Every leap is a battle against the cold nothingness of space. I see a sea of people gathered together and realize that's where I am trying to go. I make one more giant leap, but the blue burn catches my ankles, and I fall. The impact of my plummet shatters the rock in two. Hundreds of these beings fall into the chasm I created behind me. I try to heave each of them back to the surface, and I do until I can't anymore. My elbows won't bend, my arms are too weak to push. The descent gets warmer and warmer until all goes black, and I awake. Songs of Analysis. I am outside my body watching it float from one shapeless void into another. The first void contains a voice humming a tune, yet no presence. As I pass through each one by one, another voice joins in harmony. I tried counting the voices, but I am not sure if I'll be adding or subtracting as they fade into one, and in my confusion I lose any memory of numbers at all. I feel a tether pulling me back into being and see myself waving goodbye. A voice burrows into my mind as the serenading songs become discordant, ugly. The voice becomes louder, and I awake. Washing skin. I have gathered my belongings in a gray porcelain sink. The soap clings to my fingers. As I wash what I possess, my things begin to dissolve. I scrub harder because I know that the washing is a way to remove impurity, and I must be certain that I will not dissolve too. My mother tells me that silver is the element of false life, blue skin poison. I worry that my fingernails are soft. Mountain. I am on the mountain at Fellwinter Peak, except there is an express monorail to my neighborhood grocery in the city, which is all out of what I need. A guardian brings me a special engram. I refuse to decrypt it. I tell the guardian it is better this way, unactualized, secret, certainly containing the thing that will be needed when the moment comes. Tyra. I am someone else. I hope that someday I will meet Tyra Karn. Card 22, King's Wrath. Dina twists the emergency transponder until the circuit closes, and for the second time in her life, she feels the crackle of the beacon as it burns itself out, blasting its life into a single radio howl. Pisara, Pisara, Pisara. It means that the Queen's throne room is about to fall. Done, she tells her second. Let's not count on reinforcements. Not our reinforcements, at least. Pods are still coming in from the prison, crashing all over the Vestian outpost. The throne isn't a tactical target. Do you think they'll bypass us? Not a chance, Dina says grimly. Not the littlest chance. The Queen's Guard has technically never been defeated in battle. Pride dismisses the House of Wolves' backstab as an act of treachery, not military might. But once more, the Fallen are loose in the Reef, and if there is no treachery involved, Dina will eat dirt and call it hummus. This reminds her too much of that awful day. So when the voice comes through the door, she calls, "Hold, hold." "Paladin Dina?" the Prince of the Awoken calls. "You know that's my throne you're guarding, don't you? May I come in?" "You're not alone," she shouts back. "I have my retinue with me." A few of Dina's people lower their weapons. "Weapons up," she snaps. "We can't trust him to." Royal overrides slither through the throne room's networks. The doors open and a dazzling barrage of flashbangs plays the royal welcome. Dina stares straight into it, weapon aimed, eyes open, trusting her helmet to buffer her sight, and waiting for the first blue flash of fallen weapons. Prince Aldrin saunters in like the belle of the ball, his cocked revolver aiming at the ceiling. "At ease," he says. With a little swish of his cloak, and everyone, Dina included, responds. Just a moment's weakness, just the subtlest flicker of difference, because he is the prince and it feels so right to have royalty in his throne room again. Fingers off triggers, weapons skewed a few degrees off target. The impulse is so strong because it jives with Dina's discipline, which has already stepped in to crush the immediate instinct to blow Aldrin away. Something's wrong. Something's off. Baseline humans can react to a visual stimulus in less than 200 milliseconds. Awoken, less than 100. But there is a phenomenon that Dina and every other royal guard knows well, a trick of the mind called Attentional Blink. You are waiting for something to appear, a hostile, a gunshot, a loud noise. When it does appear, your attention blinks. You cannot detect the second event if it comes just after the first. So it is with the blue flash of arc rifle fire behind Aldrin's cloak. It could go differently, still, but there is no one in this room who can easily sight in and fire on their prince, and he has no such reciprocal inhibition. Card 23, Emissary. The clever one sees through our pawn. I am not your pawn. My will is my own, though perhaps not my actions of late. Pawns have many uses, more than you know. Her plan was multi-armed, strong. You will never see her coming. Mara Sov bows to no one. Clever or not, she will not halt the storm. They are coming. Yes. Nothing will change that now. Don't be so sure. Those I judge have agency like you will never know. Nothing. Nothing. No one. Then why are you afraid? We are 9. Ha! Are you? Are we? Truth count the voices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Haha. They will see it in our way, given time. We are the same. No one sees anything your way. You seek to hear us, them, but you don't listen. 9, 5. Yes. I wish to share your coincidence. Oh? Have you learned nothing? Even we should not use that word. What tipped you off? The paracausal nightmare in the reef, or the hunter with the bleeding eyes? Enough! Even you have tempers. The pawn will give us agency. In this, her goal is our goal. We made her thusly. Yes and no. You will never understand us. Yes, they are coming, and when they arrive, she will do as she always does. Judge. In that, we agree. I'm judging you too. Everything dies, even the ones riding the oncoming storm. Dogma. There is an end to everything. Dogma. The greatest threat to a guardian is another guardian. Dogma. 3 keys. Dogma. Safe harbor is very far away. Dogma. I'm sick of your dogma. I'll just be a little longer, Namki.